Hey guys, I'm Jeremy, and today I thought I'd tell you about a cool philosophy called Yin and Yang that falls under Taoism. And I'm not just telling you this because I think it's an interesting philosophy from 2,400 years ago, but because I think it could help you in your life and understand the world more, and even understand some things like about politics, for instance. So if you're not familiar with Yin and Yang, it's basically how two opposing forces work together to create harmony. And so most of these things are the opposite. Like you have yin, which is black, and yang, which is white. You have dark, light, night, day, cold, hot, weak, strong, passive, active, rich, poor, soft, hard, etc. So everything needs a balance between these two things, whether in your own life or in nature even. Like in nature, you have the four seasons, right? In winter, everything's pretty much dead and freezing and cold and not very active. And then spring comes and everything comes alive. And then in summer, everything's really hot and everything's super active. And then in fall, things slow down, you get a harvest, and then you're back into winter. So you have these cycles. And if some of these cycles are out of balance, it'll have to even out in some other way. Like if there's too much rain, you'll get a bunch of flooding, and that could destroy your whole area. Or if it's too dry, you'll get a drought, and that could create fires and many other problems. And this could be the same in our personal lives. Like we have happiness and sorrow. We wouldn't really appreciate happiness that much if we never did have sorrow, and vice versa. If you work too hard, it might seem like a good thing, but if it's too much, you could be stressed out and have a heart attack or not spend enough time with your family. But if you don't work enough, you could have financial problems or end up homeless or something like that. So it's about creating a good balance. So these opposing forces are not acting against each other, they're working together. And it doesn't always have to be 50-50. That's why when you look at yin, you see there's a little white dot in there. And when you look at yang, you could see a little bit of yin or the white dot in there. So sometimes it's just a little bit of the other side to create this balance. And it's always moving, which is why if you look at the yin and yang, it kind of flows over and back. So there's sometimes when you might need a little bit of yin or a lot of yin, or a little yang and a lot of yang. It's kind of like, for instance, this is subjective, but you can have a black coffee, right? And some people like their coffee black. But I think if you put a little bit of cream and sugar, it makes it much better. Now, I wouldn't put half of the sugar and cream in my black coffee because it would ruin it. But a little bit is great in my opinion. The same thing with alcohol. Actually, a little bit of alcohol, like a glass of red wine a day, is actually good for you. But if you have 2 bottles a day, it's probably not that good. And so your body and your health, it's the same idea, right? Like you want to obviously eat good food and not too much or you'll get fat. If you don't eat enough, you could starve or die in the other extreme. And it's not just Taoism talks about this kind of things. You see this in other philosophies or in physics. Like Isaac Newton said, for every action, there's an equal opposite reaction. Meaning like, if you're on a seesaw and one person goes down, the other person's going to go up. If you push very hard against something, you'll move back, but that other object will go back as well. And other religions, like in Buddhism or Hinduism, you have like karma. And if you do some bad things to people, maybe it'll come around and bad things can happen to you. So you see this kind of idea of balance in many things in life and many philosophies. So it's kind of ironic that although I'm interested in yin and yang, and I lived in China and Taiwan for 15 years, it wasn't when I lived there that I was interested in it necessarily. When I was maybe in middle school or high school, I'd seen that symbol around and read a little bit about it, and it really rang true because I'd seen a lot of things kind of evened out in life. Like you'd see these amazing stars and you'd think as a kid like, wow, they're so lucky, they're famous, they're rich, they're beautiful. But then you'd see like all the drug problems they'd have, or their marriage problems, or problems with their kids, or they'd overdose. So I saw that although you might have a lot of good things in your life, like there could be other problems with that. And same thing with the kids I grew up with. Some of the kids who were super popular in high school, it didn't mean that they had a great outcome in life. They might have gotten into drugs or had a lot of problems too with their jobs or marriage or kids or whatever. And some of those kids who got picked on every day were really smart. After high school, they went on and had great careers, had stable families, and did really well for themselves. So it kind of evened out in a lot of ways. And so you could also look at some of the attributes that you have and see how that will have positive and negative things. Like, I think having a high level of intelligence you'd think would be always good. Not necessarily, because I think a very average person, you have more in common with everyone if you're a commoner, right? And if you're super smart, you're only going to relate to a smaller group of people. And so your relationships, whether with friends or men or women or whatever, are going to be different because you're at a different wavelength. If I look at some of my own attributes in life, I've seen how they've been negative. I didn't think this maybe even a few years ago or when I was a kid. But generally speaking, I have good social skills, I'm hardworking, I have some leadership skills, etc. And since I do have good social skills, I've been able to kind of hang out in all the different groups, whether they're, the jocks or the hippies or the musicians or the artists or the army guys or whatever. I could hang out with whoever. It never really mattered to me. And same thing even on the political side. I've kind of been more on both sides of my life. So I've hung out with more of the lefties, and I didn't really feel like I fit in with them. And I've hung out with more of the right-wing people, and I didn't feel exactly like I fit in with them. And so it's like I'm kind of almost like a chameleon in the way that I could definitely hang out with whoever. I'm cool with anyone, but I don't really fit in any group. So that kind of could be good or bad. And then even like the leadership skill thing, like, that's great for, like, I'm trying to do my own tours in China or even in the States now. But, like, if I go and apply for a lot of jobs, they've seen that I've ran, a small company doing tours and stuff, and that I have leadership skills, they probably don't want a leader. They want a worker. They don't want someone competing for their job or someone that might surpass them, or maybe they don't feel that comfortable with me, because I do have a strong personality in many ways. And so when I've tried to do business, whether like tours or selling pizza or different things over the years, I felt like some people didn't easily want to work with me necessarily, and it's probably because of these kinds of things. Maybe we weren't on equal wavelengths, or I intimidated them, or something. And I'm also just very direct too, and some people, especially in China, aren't very direct. They like to go around to explain things. So some of this is cultural. And so there's many other ways you could look at how you're going to go through life, like in your career. And so you can pick a job or something you like very much, but it's probably going to pay low. If you take a job you really don't like, you might get paid a lot, but you're not going to be as happy. So it's really hard to find that balance. Like, some people make a ton of money for 30, 40 years, and then they retire and they could stay in 5-star hotels and travel the world easily. Like, money's never going to be an issue. Where I kind of did the opposite. I spent most of my 20s and 30s traveling around the world. And so now later I have to make up for that by making money. So it just depends what you want. You also might want to change careers in life, but you'll find that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. You might end up moving to a new city or get a new job, and it might be better, but in a few months or a year, you'll find out that you're going to have other challenges. So that's why you have that yin yang kind of flowing. You always need to kind of recalibrate when you do different things in life like that. I know when people first moved to China, because I lived there a long time, the first 6 months to a year, we call it the honeymoon period, because everyone's so excited. It's different food. They're not talking about the same boring subjects at home, like the sports team and what car do you drive and what career. You're kind of freed from that, and you're exploring, and everything's new. But after 2 or 3 years, you talk to those same people, and they're burned out, now complaining about a whole host of different things. Maybe not the same things they complained about at home, but there's just a different can of worms in China or living overseas. And so I think lastly, I would mention that when you look at politics, obviously there's a left and a right. And so I think it's bad to be too far in each extreme, whether you're far left or far right. Like, there should be more of a balance. It doesn't have to be 50-50, but you should try to appreciate some of the things on the other side, because it's not like this just exists all over the planet for no reason. Like every single country more or less has kind of like, unless it's one party or something, but you know, they have like a liberal and a conservative side. So you have to figure out the yin and the yang. How do you balance that? Because a good compromise is better than two people hating each other, which is obviously where things have gotten today. People are so polarized. I think it's really the yin and the yang's out of whack, and that's why the whole society is falling apart, to be honest. And also, you have to understand that many of these policies are things, it's easy for people, especially when you're really polarized on one of the far extremes, and you think that all of those things are right, and that everything about the other thing is bad, but it's just not that easy. Everything is more of trade-offs. So like something, let's say universal health care, that might seem great, and I'm not necessarily against it or anything. It's just that it's a trade-off because taxes will definitely go up. Businesses and people will pay more. Like, you know, if you compare to the US to Canada or Europe, there's definitely lower taxes in the States because of that. And so if taxes are higher, more jobs will leave and it'll be more expensive to operate, etc. Much more people will go to the hospital if it's free. Like if I could get free shrimp or lobster today, I would definitely go and just keep getting that if I could, right? So there definitely is changes in behavior. So it's not about being wrong or right. It's just that there's trade-offs with everything. So anyway, I hope this video was helpful for you. I'll make more videos on this topic, talking a little bit more about like politics and economics and stuff, because I really didn't understand these things like even 5-10 years ago necessarily. And the more I understand that, and I look at the yin and yang and all of my travels around the world and things I've experienced, it makes it a lot easier for me to understand why things are the way they are in the world. So I'll try to make a few more videos on this subject. I hope you enjoy, and then in a couple months I'll have some other cool videos when I go to Mexico and Peru. So like and subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.